This is a breakdown of popular party meals from every decade in the 20th century in the US. By the end of the video, you'll have seen the most unusual ones we've found. Some of these will bring some nostalgia, so make sure you prepare your tissues. 1900s. At the dawn of the 20th century, families gathered around tables laden with simple yet nourishing options. The lack of refrigeration meant favoring dishes that could last. The star of many gatherings was a dish that didn't require immediate cooking or serving hot. Sliced thinly and served on platters, it was a practical choice for hosts. Wondering what's the dish in question? Cold meats, often including varieties like pork and tongue, were a favorite for their ease of preparation and serving. Just when you think it's all about simplicity, the next decade cooks up something that turns tradition on its head. Let's see what's next. 1910s. Moving into the 1910s without modern refrigeration, preserving food became a creative endeavor. One popular method involved encasing ingredients in pastry, not just for preservation, but for delight as well. This dish, often found at gatherings, combined the sweet with the practical, making use of seasonal fruits and turning them into a dessert that could steal the show. It evolved over time, with modern takes adding new flavors like salted caramel or savory elements. But what dish captured the essence of this era? Apple pies. As we leave the pies behind, the Roaring Twenties stir up a blend that's both forbidden and irresistible. Can you guess what kept the parties alive during Prohibition? 1920s. In the 1920s, parties were glamorous, with jazz music and fancy dresses. But what really made these parties special was a certain type of drink, especially during Prohibition when alcohol was banned. People loved to secretly enjoy these drinks, making them even more exciting. These drinks were mixed with different ingredients, sometimes sweet, sometimes sour, but always with a bit of alcohol. Imagine a drink with strawberries and champagne, perfect for a 1920s party. That's right, the big hit of the 1920s parties was cocktails. After the cocktail shakers settled, the 1930s brought a dish that comforts a nation through tough times. Up next, let's discover the beginnings of a meal that fed millions. 1930s. The 1930s were tough, and food had to be simple and filling. People got creative with what they had. They would take basic ingredients and turn them into a big meal that could feed the whole family. One popular way was to mix everything together and bake it in one big dish. This wasn't just any dish. It was something that could be made from leftovers or whatever was in the pantry, shaped into a loaf and baked. It was warm and comforting and made sure nothing went to waste. The dish, often a centerpiece at dinner, was meatloaf, a true classic of the 1930s. Moving from the simplicity of the 1930s, the 1940s introduced ingenuity in the kitchen out of necessity. The next dish is going to surprise you. The 1940s. During the 1940s, the war affected everything, including what people ate. Ingredients were scarce, so cooks had to be smart with their food. They found a way to use less meat, but still make filling meals. By mixing a little bit of meat with something else they had plenty of, they created a new favorite. Imagine taking some meat, adding it to batter, and frying it up. This dish was not only tasty, but also a clever way to stretch what little they had. The meat used was often from a can, making it last longer and go further in meals. That dish? Corned beef fritters. As we march out of the 1940s, the 1950s await with an elegance that's both easy and delightful. Let us see how a simple egg becomes the life of the party. 1950s. Among the many popular dishes of the 1950s era, one stood out for being both simple and delicious. It started with something as basic as an egg. A classic was reborn by boiling it, removing the yolk, mixing it with flavorful ingredients, and then putting it back. The dish was often seen at parties and family gatherings, adding a touch of elegance without too much effort. And now, imagine adding a modern twist to it, like sweet and spicy bacon bits. This dish is deviled eggs, a staple of the 1950s that's still loved today. Leaving the chic 50s behind, the 1960s invite us to dip into a dish that's all about sharing and carefree indulgence. Are you ready for a communal culinary experience? 1960s. In the 1960s, a dish became popular not just for its taste, but for the experience it offered. Originally a pot of melted cheese for dipping bread, it has evolved. Now think of a pot of melted chocolate on the table, with fruits and marshmallows ready to be dunked in. This dish, called fondue, created a fun communal eating experience, perfect for the social vibe of the 60s, and became a favorite for gatherings. As the fondue pot cools, the 1970s sweeten the deal with a dessert that's as nutritious as it is delicious. Can you guess what cake took the cake in this health-conscious era? 1970s. The 1970s saw the rise of a dessert that was delicious and somewhat nutritious. Originally made with carrots to add moisture and sweetness, this cake was a hit. As people have become more health-conscious, this cake has seen variations, including using ingredients like quinoa flour and coconut oil. But the essence of what made it famous remains the same. With its rich taste and healthier twist, carrot cake continues to be a beloved treat from the 70s. From the wholesome sweetness of the 70s, we dive into the 1980s, where the C meets a surprising twist. Prepare your palate for a starter that redefines elegance. 1980s. This decade saw a popular starter that combined the freshness of the sea with a creamy dressing. Initially, avocados were used as boats, filled with juicy prawns and a classic seafood sauce. Over time, this dish evolved, incorporating a dressing made from avocado, including ginger, mint, and coconut milk. Adding charred prawns and papaya to the mix made it even more special. Can you guess the dish that made a splash in the 80s? The prawn cocktail. After the splash of the prawn cocktail, the 1990s roll in with a bite-sized wonder that's as versatile as it is delightful. Are you curious to see what gave parties a new flavor? 1990s. In the 90s, every party featured a certain bite-sized pastry. Originally made with inexpensive beef, these pastries were a hit due to their simplicity and appeal. Fast forward and they've been transformed with gourmet twists, such as chili, mint, and lamb. This snack that saw itself reinvented from a party basic to a gourmet delight is the mini sausage roll. Leaving the savory delights of the 90s, we step into the 2000s, where a sweet frenzy takes over. Now get ready to discover the dessert that became a cultural icon. 2000s. The early 2000s brought a dessert craze that combined aesthetic appeal with delicious flavors. Initially, these desserts came in classic flavors like vanilla and chocolate, often too pretty to eat. As their popularity grew, so did the creativity in their creation. An important moment was the opening of a dedicated bakery in Beverly Hills in 2005, followed by another brand known for bite-sized versions in 2009, and a TV show that aired the same year, making these treats a cultural phenomenon. Can you guess the dessert that captured everyone's hearts in the 2000s? They were cupcakes. If you enjoyed watching this video, you'll definitely like this one.